and welcome to this week's Say Report. I'm your host, Sejohn. I don't know why I had to think about that. I'm the same guy I've always been, at least as far as I know. But funny about that being a guy that you think you are and finding out you're not, man, that's telegraphing something for later, isn't it, Dev?
I guess I don't. It could. You could literally be referencing 4 of the 5 things I want to talk about this week.
I mean, maybe I am. This is the forgotten episode, forgotten by us, not by anybody else but us.
Yeah, I feel like I'm in cloud cuckoo land right now.
Boom.
Yeah, bam.
Yeah, so Devon Decker here as my host companion, of course.
Devon Decker, the host's companion. Woo!
Oh, okay. So as you mentioned before we started recording, there's a ton of stuff that we could talk about this week, which when isn't there? But was there anything in particular that you wanted to start on?
Yeah, I want to get some stuff out of the way. I want to get 2 things out of the way, and that's I saw a couple of movies last week. Since we last recorded, that I kind of want to talk about quick, brief, because I think both of them are worth seeing.
Yeah. Okay.
Even though no one else feels that way, based on many factors.
Let's talk about it. What are we talking about?
Jumanji came out. Jumanji: The Next Level came out, and I wrapped that in a sandwich of mediocre bread. And the top layer of the bread, or the bottom layer of the bread, I guess it'd be the bottom layer, right?
Bread.
What?
There's a lot of fiber in mediocre bread, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, they call it diabetes bread in the South. I found that out today. I saw Playmobil the movie.
Okay. Yeah.
Which
right.
I think it's not even going to break $1 million in its domestic run. It made $60 million in Europe. So let's give some credit there, where Playmobil is actually something. I've come to find out because I looked up information about the Playmobil movie toys, which makes sense because Playmobil is a toy to start with. And every unboxing or discussion video was someone who sounded like Will. So,
so it must have been European. No, yeah, or it was from the 1600s. But yeah, so Playmobil the movie. For anybody that doesn't know, have we talked about this yet on here?
No, we haven't talked about it. I wanted to see it before I talked about it. So
for anybody that's thinking, is it just a ripoff of the Lego movie? I don't know how to tell you that it's it's not. Is it, Dev?
It is. Okay, if the Lego movie is like sitting and waiting to get a coffee at the posh coffee bar that there's a posh coffee bar in your neighborhood right now that you're thinking of every time I say posh coffee bar.
It's the place where you're afraid to go and say the word coffee. That place.
Yeah. There's a way to order, but the only way to know how to order is to have ordered there before. Mm-hmm. That's the Lego movie. Playmobil, the movie, is another place where you're afraid to go, but it's that biker bar where somebody was shot at least a month ago. Always.
I'm afraid to say the word coffee, but it's for very different reasons.
Yes. They are 2 very different ends of the spectrum, and this be where the spoilers start, me friends. Because Playmobil the movie is about a girl and her younger brother, and in 2015, as she was graduating high school and ready to go on a trip through Europe.
Now, just to establish, if I'm not mistaken, real people, real world
human beings,
human
living
beings.
You and I. It could be you and me. It could be me as the sister and you as the younger brother.
Because lest we give the impression that this started with toys moving around, a la the Lego movie. Okay,
no, it's all human beings. They sing a lavish song about going out there and finding adventure, and then they look at the clock and they notice, oh, it's 10 o'clock. That's kind of late. And then there's
I'm sorry, I don't want to drag this out any longer than we have to, but did you just say this was a musical?
Yeah, it's a wicked musical. It's got 4 songs in it. Adam Lambert of American Idol and, successor to the mantle of Freddie Mercury in Queen is the villain.
Okay. And just to just to even the playing field, lay all the cards on the table, I guess, lest we forget that Lego Movie 2 actually is a musical as well, and they actually reference the fact that they have become a musical in the plot of Lego Movie 2. So it's actually plot significant that they have become a musical in that movie. And so here we are with Playmobil 6-7 months later. Okay, sorry, keep going.
No. I mean, well, first of all, Playmobil came out in August in Europe. So let's just it's a much shorter window too. Let's just talk about it. But also, the reason why that window is shorter is because they're not really ripping off the Lego Movie, because these two siblings' parents are dead. They die in a car crash.
Okay.
And
so
that's
beat for beat on the plot, it's not. But let's talk about what this movie becomes.
So we do a time jump 4 years earlier, and it is responsible for my favorite bit of IMDb trivia. There's a new king in town for best bit of trivia on IMDb, and that's someone saying this movie starts in 2020 and goes 4 years forward into 2024, and yet all of the signage for the toy convention says 2019. Nice try, Playmobil the movie.
Oh man, does it actually say that at the end?
It actually says that at the end.
Oh, magnifique. Oh, you can just taste the smug. I love it. Oh.
And yet, if you look at her passport where we start, the issue date is in 2015. So then 4 years from that, I don't know, math still works, right? It's 2019, which is this year. So it jumps forward 4 years, and she has assumed all responsibility. She's put her dreams on hold, and her younger brother is like, you're no fun anymore. So, that's there's a sibling conflict right there. And what he wants to do is go visit a friend's house. So she's like, no, you can't do that. You need to stay in. So he sneaks out and is going to visit a friend's house, walking through the streets of New York alone. He's 12 years old, I think, maybe younger, 10, 12. Okay. And then on his way to the friend's house, he sees Toy Con, and he's like, well, I got to sneak into Toy Con because I'm a 12-year-old boy and I can sneak into Toy Con somehow. So he sneaks into Toy Con. She uses Find My iPhone to locate him at Toy Con. They go inside. And this is how you know it's a movie. Toy Con is dominated by Playmobil. Everything is Playmobil. Nothing else is going to be displayed at Toy Con. The entire convention floor has been recreated into Playmobil land. And Charlie, the younger brother, is loving it, because he still has the little Viking figure that he played with his older sister on his backpack. So nice. He's walking around and she finds him and he's like, I just need to put my Viking here. It's where he belongs. And he puts it there. And then she's like, now we need to go. And she goes to grab the Viking, knocks it over. The lighthouse activates and starts scanning. I guess the best thing is Tron. It reminded me of Tron.
Yeah,
Tron, when Jeff Bridges gets sucked into the computer. So it starts doing that to Playmobil, and all the toys start getting sucked into the lighthouse, where her and her brother are also sucked in, and they become Playmobil people.
Ta-da! So now everybody hates Playmobil. Okay.
So now it's a Playmobil world, and her brother actually looks like the Viking figure. She just looks like herself, which is interesting. And he as a Viking is made the grandest hero of Viking land, because
it is actually really kind of weird that they didn't just make the Viking another character and have Zach Galifianakis come in.
Yeah,
that man.
Yeah, it's weird that he's the Viking, but he's made the champion of Viking land, which means that he is captured by Maximus, played by Adam Lambert, and brought to the Colosseum, where he will fight against a grand monster that is not revealed. As bread and circus for the people of that. It's like Acropolis. It's like Metro Acropolis. It's two things slammed together.
Nice. Okay.
So he's captured. So his older sister Marla sets out on this journey through all the different Playmobil lands to find him. And that's where it starts to get a little Lego movie, because you got Cowboy Land and Cityland and...
Before we get too much to the spoilery bits at the end of this film or whatever, we should talk about this, because you're right. This is where it starts to sound very much like the Lego movie. Because if you really think about it, And this is coming from somebody who loves the Lego movie and is like, we own a copy of both Lego movie and Lego movie 2 and Batman and Ninjago and all that shit. Like, down on the Lego. It is a movie specifically built to market in a way that it's audacious. It reminds me of watching like an 80s cartoon, and I think that's part of the reason why I love it so much. Is like there are like very, 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 very thin plot threads that allow for certain characters to just show up that are funny, but like also if you really think about it, the whole thing breaks down, right? Like it is a no lie commercial for Lego. And in that mindset, somebody thought, okay, let's make a Lego movie and show off every franchise we own, every type of Lego that's out there to show everybody what's available out there as a one big commercial, right? It's really hard to look at the Playmobil movie and not think somebody had that exact same thought. As much as it seems like they've done a really good job of differentiating themselves from the Lego movie in plot and style and all of that, like at the end of the day, the concept is still exactly the same in a way that's kind of weird. I will say it's not gross, it's not surprising, but it's a little like off-putting, I guess.
So I will say two things to that very subject. Thing one is Playmobil currently has one license, and all I wanted was for that license to show up, and it does.
Isn't that like Halo or something?
Playmobil currently has Ghostbusters.
That's right. Okay.
And she falls from Viking Land to like a highway, like, you know, like a super highway. And not only does the Ghost Ecto one go by, but you hear the siren. And I'm like, literally, that's all I needed. Because Playmobil, as far as I know, is not franchisey, right? Like, they have their little worlds, like Space and Wild West and that. But what this one is specifically selling is Playmobil the movie as its own subgenre and subculture within Playmobil toys.
Right.
Because they design and they bring a lot of things in that really didn't exist in Playmobil before, from what I can tell. Especially looking at the sets. The characters in these ones, they have more expressive faces than the other Playmobil sets, or at least the Playmobil sets I remember as a child, because Dale was really big into Playmobil. And it feels like it's all in service of selling this one specific thing, as opposed to Lego, which is like, we have all the things.
Yeah.
It's definitely more, it's more directed marketing.
Yeah, I think if Playmobil had the choice in this world, they'd
I'm
have
sure they would. Yeah.
But right. So
yeah, but again, it's not like she doesn't partner up with like Pete Venkman and go driving around in Ecto 1 to save her brother. She partners up with basically Jim Gaffigan as a Playmobil and drives around in his food truck that is not a food truck anymore. It's just where he lives. But it's like, but it's nice that it's a food truck because I can cook if I want to.
Yeah, this sounds like the kind of movie that like I would not mind watching on a Saturday afternoon.
Oh, you'd love it. Like, I need to tell you, this is the kind of movie that you would love.
It's ridiculous.
But the problem is that everybody looked at it and was like, rip off of the Lego movie next. And it's like, and it didn't do itself any favors with the marketing making it look like it was a ripoff of a Lego movie. They didn't touch on the fact that it was
right out of my mouth.
Human beings sucked into Playmobil land.
Right.
Like another movie I saw this week, Jumanji. like they should have been marketing to the Jumanji crowd, not to the Lego movie crowd. And I think that was a big misstep that led to their opening weekend only being $625,000. Like, if you were making granulated cylinders to judge profits on movies, $1 million would be the marks. So like, it doesn't even hit the first line on your granulated cylinder, because it's been so long since a movie has made less than $1 million in its opening weekend.
Is that your word of the day? Did you just sneak in your goddamn word of the day calendar into this podcast?
Which one? Granulated cylinder?
Yeah.
No, it's because I use that analogy because I said to Dale, it's sad that this only made $625,000, and she's like, I don't understand that. And I'm like, yeah, the reason you don't understand it is this, and that was my analogy, is because everything that we know tells us that movies are judged in millions of dollars. Yeah. So for a film to make less than that, it's hard to wrap your head around.
Especially an animated movie that is getting a wide release. I mean, we're not talking about like an indie film that was like thrown in theaters. This isn't directed by like fucking Wes Anderson or something. Like this was marketed at least as supposedly like a big like animated alternative to what right now? Frozen? Is that what they wanted?
Yeah, I guess it was. Well, it was initially supposed to come out, like I said, back in August.
Yeah, any word on why that happened?
The Zach, I don't know if they're going to talk about it on Say Report Jr., but Zach went on a very heavy dive into what happened with the Playmobil movie, and by all accounts, it appears that the companies that were like making it and planning on releasing it all closed down.
Oh, geez. All
so
right.
like
we'll let them dig into that, but that sounds like an awful story.
Yeah. The real crazy thing though is that it was released on DVD in the UK on September 6th.
Okay.
So, and because of that, and because of how the internet works, there's like a bunch of things that shows its DVD release date as September 6th. So when I saw that it was coming to theaters, I'm like, didn't this already come out on DVD? Like, what are they hoping to accomplish with this?
Yeah.
Award show
it's
buzz?
That Oscar push. Yeah, man. Daniel Radcliffe's due, man. Daniel
Radcliffe. That's the other thing. It's got Daniel Radcliffe in it.
Yeah, have we not talked about that? In a spectacular role for Daniel Radcliffe.
Oh, he's perfect. It's fun. The movie's lots of fun. Go see it. That's all I want to say on it, is that it is worth watching. More than likely, it will show up on a streaming service so that it can recoup something. And when it is on there, watch it, because it's a good time. And even just knowing that it's humans brought into the world, there's so much more that I didn't touch on. And I will give you
$1 if it's not Hulu. By the way, just put that out there.
Okay, I'm all about this dollar bet that we have. I feel like trading places.
Oh man,
the usual bet.
Is that a Christmas movie?
Yeah, it's definitely a Christmas movie. 100% a Christmas movie. That's why we can talk about it. It's only okay to talk about Trading Places after Thanksgiving and before January 6th.
Understood.
Yeah. So that brings me to the movie that popped my Christmas movie cherry, and that is... Don't send images because it's recorded in the episode. So I just need you to know that. That noise that everybody just heard, that was Sejohn sending me a picture.
It's okay. I'm going to keep doing it, though.
That's okay, good. Well, now everybody knows. Now everybody's in on it. I popped my Christmas cherry for 2019, and I saw Last Christmas.
Oh, okay. All right, man.
And
You're
I'm
the
not...
only person I know that has.
Apparently. It was fun. I had a lot of fun with it. The internet did figure out exactly what the plot of that movie is. But if you put that out of your head and you just try to enjoy it as a Christmas movie, there's some really great interpersonal relationships between Emilia Clarke's character and everybody she interacts with. It was fun. It was a fun movie. And highlighted by two things, they used like no less than 5 different versions of the song Last Christmas.
Oh, God. Okay.
Which was every time it happened, like there's that part of my brain that thought of Fat Pig and our high school career, and you know that what was the song? Just Too Good to Be True. Can't Take My Eyes Off of You. Was that the song?
You're like having a touch. I love you so much. That one.
Yeah. Da 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 da. I love you, baby. That's the name of the song. I love you, baby. I thought of that every time a new version came on, but also I'm like, good for them. Good for them knowing that, like, this song has been covered 1,000,000 times. Let's highlight some. And the second thing is, in the very special thank you section, they thanked Andrew Ridgeley. And Andrew Ridgeley's the other guy in Wham! And so many people forget that. So it was nice that the movie, like, thank you, Andrew Ridgeley. Because, yeah, this was a lot of George Michael. I mean, the soundtrack is almost exclusively George Michael songs as well. It's
Sounds
fun.
Like this was a movie made for you.
Yeah, in a lot of ways. And I mean, I couldn't help but sing along to Faith. The only weird thing that happened with this movie, and then we'll get to other topics because there's so much more, and we're already 20 minutes into the episode, is we got to the theater to see this. We saw Jumanji. We saw 4 o'clock Jumanji. Love Jumanji, but we're going to wait a little bit to talk about Jumanji because that's spoilerific, and I want to give people time to see it.
Yeah.
So then we go and we go to the next theater for our next movie to see Last Christmas, and we are the only 3 people in there, and none of us are saying anything because we don't want to tempt fate. And then the trailers start, and one whole trailer goes by, and then a group of 4 women come in. And that's fine, right? I'm like, okay, that's good. There's going to be some other people watching it. And they proceed to sit directly in front of us in an empty theater.
Oh, God.
And then,
like,
the last one, the one who has not yet sat down, goes, you know what? I'm sorry. We're going to move and sit one row down.
Oh, my
And I'm
God.
just like, thank you? But then I feel like a jerk because I'm like, I know I was giving off a vibe. Like, are you kidding me? It's an empty theater and the seat right in front of me is where you're going to sit.
You made it worse by pointing out that I was uncomfortable.
I'm like, I understand it. It's just disappointing. And then they moved down and then they fell asleep during the movie.
Are you kidding
And not
me?
like quiet sleeping, like the one was snoring.
Oh,
and they all
God.
thought it was funny that the one was snoring. Not like we're going to wake her up. No, the real trash people is, spoilers for Last Christmas, Henry Golden's character is dead the whole time.
Okay.
Crazy dead
surprise.
Asian. Feel bad about that. Surprise. He's dead. But the reason why he's dead, I'll leave to you. Like, because there's a twist as to who he is to her. And then at the end of it, one of them goes, I don't get it. And it's like, what don't you get? And she's like, did she know him before he died? I'm going to tell you this without spoilers. This does not ruin anything. No, she didn't know him before he died. In fact, earlier this year, we did an episode on a movie that's very similar to this one. Oh, so a Say Scavenger Hunt. I love a Say Report Scavenger Hunt.
Nice.
If you go back through the episodes, there's an episode, and the movie that this one is very similar to is right there in the title. So maybe you can put together how she knows him and not be like this woman who watched the movie, fell asleep during the movie, was not a quiet sleeper in the theater, right?
Oh, God.
And then was like, I don't get it. Very loudly. Well, yeah, you slept through, the movie.
Yeah. It's like the time that I watched people walk out of the movie 1408 20 minutes before the movie was over, thinking that the end had come. There's a very clear moment in the climax of that movie when you think it's over, but then it's not. Watch them walk out. Then they proceeded to wait for the rest of their group that was still in the movie with us, and then complained afterwards about how the ending of that movie sucked. The ending that they didn't see, did they really think their friends were in there for 20 minutes watching credits? What did they think was going on?
I don't know.
Anyway.
Was I there for you that, or was that the first time you saw 1408?
No, that was the first time I saw 1408. And then we saw it at the cheapo theater one night.
Yeah. So it's just one of those things where, like, that, I just, like, first of all, you got here kind of late, tried to sit in front of me. It was just crazy. It was just this moment where I'm like, where, like, Jumanji, the people were lined up ready to see that 4 o'clock with all sorts of excitement for what this movie would be. It was just highs and lows of movies on Thursday night. But I really enjoyed both of them. I got to say, the 3 flicks I caught last week were very good. So that's it. And I wanted to be somebody who talked about Playmobil the movie. Because it's worth talking about. Much like Serenity was worth talking about. Even though it might not be the greatest movie, it's a movie worth seeing and worth, like, experiencing.
Friggin' Serenity. Oh my God. Yeah, I forgot about that movie until you just brought it up. So you've had a week of highs, yeah? Because even your gaming has
we kind of alluded to this. The reason why I was seeing movies is I have officially beaten 199 video games, unique video game experiences for the year 2019. The final game 199, was Shovel Knight King of Cards. And as a pretty good game. I'm going to give a little quick review here. It was fun. I enjoyed it more than Spectre of Fate. Because
this was the one that you were kind of feeling a little squishy about, though, right?
I was feeling squishy about it. And the reason why is they give all this emphasis to a card game that is introduced to it, like a Hearthstone triple triad type game. But it turns out you don't need to play the game. You get to the first Joustus house, and, you know, it makes it seem like you need to beat everybody in order to move forward in the game. Because it's a world map very, like, I mean, Shovel Knight has a world map similar to Super Mario Bros. 3. But King of Cards takes it to the next level, where instead of just, like, every boss has a level, every boss has, like, 3 levels that are inspired by their theme. So it feels more like a Super Mario Bros. 3, where you're going into different levels and trying to beat them in order to proceed.
Right.
So you beat all the levels that are up to this Joustus house, which it's a tavern, but I guess you can't call it a pub or a tavern because, you know, video games are for children. I don't know why it's a Joustus house and not like the pub.
Yeah, I don't know either. It's a friggin' night in night times. I think if you said he was going into the local pub, I think whatever.
But I mean, yeah. So you go in, and the first thing you do is learn how to play the game, and then like it's sort of tutorial until you get to the boss, and the boss is Black Knight from, you know, the Shovel Knight games, and he cheats in a way that like he can do a line clearing move.
Okay.
And it's like, well, that sucks, because, like, I'm kind of understanding the game, but then you have this guy coming in, and he's like, there's a new mechanic you gotta learn, and I'm like, well, I know I can buy cheats, but you know what, I'm gonna leave. I'm gonna see if there's anything else going on. Like, I'll try to, like, grind up money so I can buy these cheats or whatever. But when you leave the Joustus house, you're taken aboard an airship, which brings you to the next section of the map. And, you know, you can proceed through the game, and as it turns out, due to a loophole in the rules of the Joustus Championship, defeating the Joustus judges, which are like the 3 guys who are in charge of the competition.
Right.
If you defeat them in battle, it's the same as beating them in a game of cards. So
you don't even have to play the game.
So you don't have to play the card game. Like, in the beginning, the first night that I played it, I'm like, all right, so this is 40% like the platforming that I came to love in the other Shovel Knight games, and 60% this card game that, like, doesn't work for me. I'm not a big fan of minigames, which we're going to get to as this episode goes on. But, like, feeling like I was forced to play this minigame, and then I'm like, well, I'm just going to go forward. I'll see what happens. It'll be fun to continue and see what occurs. And then suddenly I beat the game because I'm just going through fighting people, and I'm like, oh, so I never have to play the card game. A point that was then confirmed when Yacht Club Games posted on Twitter yesterday that all the card game is completely optional. Which, that feels like bad game design to me, when you don't indicate in the game that it's optional, and you have to tweet out.
I'm curious, and I know, you know, I have not touched it, and so this is me just talking out of my ass, but what is a podcast if not people talking out of their ass? I'm curious if the workaround existed since the beginning, or if there was an indication at some point in development where they were like, ugh, there are going to be people out there that don't want to play this card game. You know what I mean? Like I wonder how long the workaround existed as a concept. So like maybe there's a reason it's not referenced as much as it should be if it was there from the ground up.
Yes, that's a good point. That's a fairly good point, especially since this is a game that I had played back in 2017. I played a demo of it, and that same demo was at PAX the next 2 years. And I remember talking to people, and I think just watching the presence at like that game convention, because they had 2 stations set up. One station allowed you to actually play through a level as King Knight, and the other one allowed you to play the card game. And there was never a line at the card game one.
Yeah, yeah.
Everybody wanted to play as King Knight. Nobody was really interested in the card game. So I could
Which,
totally see them
oof,
collecting that data.
yeah, yeah. I just wish they'd stuck to their guns. If this is the case, again, we don't even know if this is
Right.
what happened.
We
But
have
if they
no proof of
really,
it.
yeah, if this workaround is a result of them being worried that maybe their concept wasn't going to hit, that's they should have just gone for it. Like look at Gwent was out for a year. They've admitted that was maybe a mistake, but they did it. Like freaking,
Yeah.
just
It's one of those
yeah.
things where I, if that's the case, if what you just suggested is the case, it makes me a little upset that we had to wait like 2 years from when they first said it would be coming out to actually get our hands on it.
Hmm.
Only because I know that optimizing the card game is the part that they said that they had to focus on the most.
Right.
Now, in truth, I think it was making sure that they could finish the Smash Brothers type fighting game that came out alongside it, Shovel Knight
Hmm.
Showdown. But I think that like with King Knight, they're like, well, let's blame it on the card game, and that's why I thought that the card game had more significance, more weight in the game, is because everything they always talked about was related to this card game.
Yeah.
And then the
Yeah.
whole story, like the opening cinematic is Joustus cards have, infected the land. Everybody wants to play. And if you beat the judges, you'll become the king of cards. Like it's the plot of the game. It's what you're told the story is. Everything you're doing up till you get to the first Joustus house is in service of getting your own deck of cards.
Yeah, so like I'm saying, man, the more you talk about it, the more it feels like this was just never part of the plan. I don't know. Like I said, I shouldn't lay that on them because I don't know anything at all.
Right,
It's
no,
just
but
it has a weird feeling to it.
it's a fine theory to have. It's a fine theory to have. And I know personally I was surprised when I went to leave and like go grind up money so I could buy cards. Cause like there's a mystery card option and that, and I'm like, oh, maybe I can buy some better cards. And then they're like, oh no, come to our airship. I'm like, what the hell? Like what? More
Yeah.
game?
Yeah, yeah. Hey, it's funny that you talk about this like weird feeling of like, hey, maybe I don't have to do this part of the game because I've been feeling a lot of that with my playthrough of Spyro, man, and also running to the airship.
Yeah, that's a good thematic theme.
Yeah,
Thematic theme.
well, it's one of those things where so I have decided to buy in on Spyro. I like I don't regret that part. I love those games, loved them when I was a kid, and like playing them again in the really really beautiful renditions has been awesome. Especially because I bought Ripto's Rage specifically on PS3 at one point, and uh the trophy for one of the flight levels is completely fucked. You can't get like there's like a full completion trophy that you can't get, so you can get everything else in it but that, which means you can never 100% it in a collectathon game. Fuck that.
That's
Like
terrifying.
yeah,
That
yeah,
hurts my
yeah,
heart a
yeah.
little bit.
Yeah, apparently it's something that if you do something in a very particular order, it soft locks that thing out of the game essentially, and it's just like great, awesome, cool. So it's something specifically that I did that I could rectify, but it is like legitimately like 4 hours into a 10-hour game. It just sucks. Anyway, so with that thought in mind, being able to play a version of those games that is not that has been awesome. So like the game itself, I think, is a fantastic thing that has happened. I also played the Crash Bandicoot one earlier this year and loved that one too. I think that they've both Naughty Dog and Activision on both of those just did such a good job of actually doing, justice to the concept. Plus also the fact that they were only $40 each, like is genius.
Especially since
Like
it's 3 games for
three
$40.
games for $40. That's nuts,
Which is
right?
why Medieval is one that I still haven't pulled the trigger on. I should have when it was $20 because that
Yeah.
was like a price I was willing to pay for it. But $40 for one game when I've seen the value that Activision put into the other two.
Yeah, I gotta say the thing about Medieval is I did play the demo for that one,
The demo's
and
incredible. I loved
the
it.
demo is such a good piece of that game. It reminded me how much I never got those games. I was never like all of my friends played Medieval and they had it and they thought it was great and I was sitting around playing other shit, and they were just like, this is what games are now. And I remember like medieval being like a huge thing because it was edgy and stuff like that. And I was like, I don't know if I'm even allowed to play it. Like that medieval exists in this weird place of like I never had it, and so I kind of feel like it's not for me in a way that Spyro and Crash were. But I get like the love for that series is clearly like strong, right? And you're not the only person I know
I didn't play them, but I have a love for them from just like
that's
how GamePro covered them.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
GamePro put so much time and effort and love into talking about that game that I feel a weird connection to these characters that I never actually controlled or interacted with.
Well, it took the collectathon idea and applied it to a Diablo-esque like world and play style, which is, again, like genius. Like it's a phenomenal like game concept. So I hope somebody out there is playing that game because you're right. Like the love that they clearly showed to remaking that is evident as well. So all that aside, I made the poor decision though of buying a Switch port of these games
Oh,
as opposed to what I should have done. I should have gotten the PS4 one. But my thinking was sound, and I stand by it, and I still actually am okay with what I've got. And the idea was Spyro on the go is just too easy, too. I can't pass that up. Like it's too good to pass up. Like the idea of being able to take a handheld with me where I can play Spyro, 3 games worth of Spyro, just sounded so good, and it still does, and that has proven to be true. Taking that game into handheld mode and being able to like go to bed at night with it, or like chill out outside with the dog, like that has been great. The issue is when you dock it. Like every issue that game has comes from docking it, and that the frame rate drops like friggin' crazy. There's like weird hitchiness to some of the controls all of a sudden that I just don't feel in handheld mode. And then on top of all of that, one of, if not two of my Switch console controller sets has started to get drift, which sucks, especially in a game like Spyro, where like if you're running and you twitch just the wrong way, you can suddenly run off the level. So like that has all come together to just make a little bit of a disheartening experience from time to time with Spyro. But it's a shame because otherwise that game is rather perfect, right? And there's this collectathon feel that I'm getting from it that I've thought for a long time maybe I just don't like those kinds of games. Ukulele kind of kind of really led the charge on that when I got that game and just didn't have it in me to finish it. I stand by the fact that I think that game is just 1 level too long. If it had been a tight 4 levels as opposed to the 5 that are in it, it would have been so much better.
Especially since that 5th level is nothing. It's a big empty. It's the space level. That's just a big empty space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
no,
I think
like
that I think that I thought that maybe I was past that phase. Like I wanted more in terms of like story and all of this stuff. No, it turns out I'm perfectly happy to like spend a couple of hours just running around collecting gems and eggs and all this stuff. But one of the things that I've had to learn is to just walk away from some stuff. To just like there's some things that I can do, I know I'm capable of doing, but man, all they bring up are these old aggravations, specifically chasing the egg thief in a couple of the early levels in Spyro proper, Spyro Enter the Dragon. What is the Yeah. So like in that one specifically, where they're not as well QA'd, they're not as tight as they are in some of the later games, it can get super aggravating. Some of the flight levels in the first one too can get a little aggravating. Having to finish every goal in one can be just like it could just rip me apart sometimes. And specifically it's because I remember being a little kid and having this issue, so I instantly revert to like that mood, right? So I've had to like tell myself like, hey, like first of all, you can always come back to it. It's not like it locks you out once you walk away. Secondly, you don't have to 100% this. I mean, part of it being on the Switch that's been so glorious is there's no trophies. There's nothing out there like that. I don't need to silver this or platinum this shit. Like I don't feel that need. Like which is good, which feels really good.
Which I am right there with you. Like that's why if a game is out on the Switch, it's usually my first thought is I should probably get it on that because I don't want to have to worry about trophies anymore. Like there was a time in my life where I understood that I cared about those the way that I did. And in fact, it's interesting with Shovel Knight because Shovel Knight, I collected all of the feats as Shovel Knight and Plague Knight. Like I did all the crazy stuff. Beat the game without dying. Beat the game with like no checkpoints. I did all this crazy stuff that they asked you to do that was ancillary. It wasn't necessary to play and enjoy that game. And then, it was like a 2-year hiatus before Spectre of Fate came out. And by the time that came out, I'm like, I just want to finish the story. I don't really need these anymore to keep me playing and invested in a game. And it's interesting that you say that, because I think one of the reasons that I was able to get through as many games as I got through this year is because I was just aiming for the end. Like, it was a lot of, I'm not going for 100% on this game. I'm just trying to complete this game.
Yep.
Which brings me to game 200. And Sejohn is partially why this is my 200th game of the year. Yep. And I asked, like, what do you think game 200 should be? And, well, he asked me, what are you going to do for your 200th game? And I had not considered that it should be something monumental.
At like 8:30 on a Sunday morning, by the way.
Yeah, it was at 8:30 on a Sunday morning, and the day before I had driven 8 hours round trip to New Jersey. So I was a special kind of exhausted.
It was a shameful exhausted. Yeah, I get that. It was,
but then I put thought into it, and I thought, there's a game that everybody talks about, that everybody says you have to play. It's a masterpiece. Masterpiece is the word that's applied to this game. And I'm like, I have never really played it.
Yeah. None of this is exaggeration so far, by the way.
No, thank you. I appreciate it.
I just, yeah, keep going.
And that game is Final Fantasy VII.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought about it, and I decided for my 200th game, not only is it going to be something that'll be a bit of a marathon at the end, right, as opposed to a sprint, it's not North versus South on NES, a game that I beat in a minute. Once I realized, this is pretty easy. This is a game that's going to, like, actually take some doing and take some, like, I have to focus on actually completing this game.
Yeah.
And I'll finally get to say I beat Final Fantasy VII. It will no longer be I've never played it.
Well, and now's a good time to do it, because in a few months' time here, we're going to start seeing the other version of this game. And so having this in your repertoire so that we can talk a little bit about what that's going to be, and you can participate in that conversation, because it's going to be a big one. Like, I feel like as much as the world has kind of grown up and moved on, I feel like Final Fantasy VII is one of those few pieces of nostalgia that just whips everybody back to 1997. But yeah.
Right. And I mean, my piece of nostalgia that does that is Symphony of the Night. And then like three great games, 3 games considered masterpieces came out that year. We've mentioned 2. The third is Ocarina of Time.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, like, I get it. It's a big year. And, I've always gone Symphony of the Night, and I didn't even play that till years later. The one I played at the time was Ocarina of Time, and there was just something that didn't work for me. And the other thing that I've learned, and Sejohn brought this up today, is I don't like mini games that are required in my gaming. And I feel like 1997 is the year that became a norm, as opposed to, like, there are mini games here that you can distract yourself with. Like, if you want to play the chess game in Link to the Past, you can get a heart piece.
Right.
If you want to dig, you can get a heart piece. But then, Ocarina of Time comes along, and it's like, oh, no, you have to fish if you want to beat the game.
Right.
Otherwise, you can't swim.
So here's where we should make some distinctions and some clarifications.
I love it.
First and foremost, when you and I were talking, we specifically were using terms like side quest, which I feel are a little bit different than saying mini games, which I'm ready to go with you down either path you choose, but we need to make that distinction now if we're going to, because the conversation we had was very, very specifically about how the side quest got moved into this position of importance for the narrative and for the ludological experience. Like, you need to. It used to be like, here is some side stuff for you to do if you want to spend more time with this game. If not, we get it. Move along. I'll like what you said was going on with Shovel Knight. Weirdly, like that is a very old way of doing that game, right? Now, this is the point, 1997, where that starts to shift and change, where it's like, hey, okay, so you can get to an ending, maybe you can get to an ending without doing any side quests, but it's not going to be the quote unquote true ending. Also, on top of that, you're only going to get half of the story. So really, you really want to kind of explore. You want to do these other things. You don't have to, but you should. Is really that kind of that shift in tone, which is a huge actual like threshold moment for gaming. It changes everything that games try to become afterwards.
Right. That's it. So the reason why I equate the side quests in Final Fantasy VII to mini games,
okay,
is Chocobo racing.
I mean, I don't think you're wrong about Chocobo racing. I think you're missing one of the best examples of it, and it comes so much earlier than Chocobo racing, and that is Cloud trying to get into the prostitution house.
Oh, I'm not there yet. I haven't done that yet.
Every step. Wait, are you at the Gold Saucer already? Doing Chocobo racing?
No. Okay. I just know that it exists in the game. That's the thing. So I just left Eris's house, so I'm not even that far in the game.
You're not too far away from what I'm talking about either, though. This is very early game for this. There is a series of mini games that you have to play, so be warned that in order to achieve a thing, and the thing is, again, if you don't succeed in those games or if you choose not to do those games, you'll be fine. The story will move on. You're going to miss out on a lot of flavor text, a lot of different so if you're like me, you perfect the shit out of that to get every piece of it. I will let you know now, you do not have to be perfect in order to get through whatever it is it's asking you to do.
All right, well, I appreciate that. And that's what's made me stop playing Final Fantasy games. I'm going to be completely honest with you.
Yeah,
it's interesting talking about it because Final Fantasy VIII was the first 3D Final Fantasy game that I played, and the card game Triple Triad, ironically enough, considering everything else we've talked about, really just coincidence. Alanis Morissette irony. Really. Is that I got so obsessed with playing Triple Triad that I didn't care about anything else in Final Fantasy VIII.
Nice.
So I was just like, ugh. And then I tried to go back to the story and I'm like, this is dumb. It didn't feel like a good or cohesive world the way that the other Final Fantasies I'd played before that one did. So I just kind of fell off. And then I got Final Fantasy IX. I was excited for Final Fantasy IX, but it starts out with that fucking sword fighting game. And the people, they cheer you and they throw money and praise and items at you, depending on how good you do in the tutorial sword fighting game. And I'm like, well, I can't move on until I get a perfect score here.
Yeah.
And I burned myself out in the tutorial of Final Fantasy IX and have literally never gone further than that scene.
That's a shame because I fucking love that one too.
And Final Fantasy X, just to finish it out, still in the shrink wrap. Got it as a Christmas gift, still in the shrink.
Yeah, I think you're okay with that, man. I don't even think Final Fantasy fans really care that much about 10. But I'm curious how you feel about the opera in 6, right? It's 6 where you have to perform the opera.
I like the opera in 6 because it's not, you don't really, it just happens. It's a background thing. It's not one of those things where because Celeste is very much standing in for an actual opera star because she kind of looks like her. And it's not one of those things where the whole point of it is she's bait. They use her as bait. So it doesn't have to be good or bad.
Yeah. Well, and so I think, I wonder how you'll feel about some of the mini-gameness in Final Fantasy VII, because I feel like it's a pretty good evolution of that, because in the fact that, you don't have to succeed at these games. It helps. I'm curious where the line is, because at what point does it change from that to Chocobo racing, right? Which I agree, there's clearly a difference. I just don't know where that line is for me personally,
Right. I mean, the only thing that I talk about it, the reason why is I tried to figure out why none of the Zelda games after Link's Awakening really worked for me. I was trying to figure it out. The only one that worked for me, I'll be honest, is Link Between Worlds. But again, that's kind of like a slant sequel remake of Link to the Past. Yeah. So it makes sense that it would work for me. But the difference is, and I realized this because I played through the Oracle games again this year, and both Oracle games have moments where progress is locked behind a minigame. And a step further than that, they're sound minigames. So I'm just I have to dance, and I've started playing games without any audio, right? And I kind of hate that I do it. On modern games, I will try to do it, but older games, I try not to. Especially like if I'm playing a Game Boy game, because most of the time I would have had the sound off anyway, or my father be yelling at me to put on headphones. It's like I don't have headphones. I have my Game Boy. I can fit one or the other in my pocket. I took the Game Boy. So I got used to playing without sound. So, and then I also think about the fact that there are some people who don't have the luxury of choosing if they're going to use sound or not. So things like that like stand out as like, well, this is prohibitive gaming. Like there are people who cannot do what you're asking them to do. Yeah. And it sucks. It kind of upsets me in a weird way.
Yeah, Jonathan Blow.
What was that?
Yes, sorry. I've been replaying The Witness, and I've recently found the grouping of sound puzzles, and you're right. It is completely prohibitive, and yeah, it's upsetting.
Yeah, it's upsetting. It's like, oh, it's like, I mean, like even Symphony of the Night has that issue where you like have to hit gears until they make a click noise, and it's just like, this game is almost perfect in that it doesn't matter anywhere except for this one optional room. That's
also, shout out to those with color-blindness. I know that you also have your issues with gaming too. That shit sucks.
Yeah, that's to not know which potion you're about to drink as Link.
Right? Or, I mean, one of the big things I've always heard is not knowing where hit points are on people, because usually they're differentiated by, well, red, which is one of the most common colors to lose.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just one of those things that, like, I noticed it, and then I'm also like, I don't want to Goron dance 3 times Oracle of Ages in order to move forward. Like, it sucks. I want to play Zelda. I want to adventure and stuff like that. Locking progress behind a minigame is frustrating to me. Yeah. And what I'm learning is that a lot of that stemmed from these 3 games that came out in 1997. And actually, it seems like, in a weird way, the mini game of it all, to build this Triforce, is stuck really heavily in Ocarina of Time. The side quest of it comes from Symphony of the Night, and it is Final Fantasy VII that merges the two.
Yeah.
And has some from each within it. And that's just strange to me, in a way, to, like, think of it. But yeah, because Symphony of the Night, you kill Richter, you're like, game over, bad ending. Like, if you don't follow any of the side quest stuff, you're done with that game, and you're like, oh, that sucked.
Yeah.
Like, so you have to do those side quests to complete that game. Where Ocarina of Time, it is literally, oh, you have to fish or you can't dive, and if you can't dive, you can't get to the next area.
Yeah, and in a weird way, you kind of need both in order for this, like, evolution to occur to modern games, where we can have a game that does everything for everybody, or at least attempts to, you know, in something like Breath of the Wild, for example, or GTA. I mean, but this idea that, like, you kind of need those games that force you to do the side gaming in order to teach people, like, hey, you should start considering doing these sometimes, and you need those games like Symphony of the Night to allow you to get to an ending without ever knowing you've got to do those, because sometimes you want that freedom, right? But, like, what if people had never learned to go looking for side stuff? Like, something had to force them to, and Symphony of the Night wasn't doing it. So, like, Zelda steps up in a weird way, like, and shows people, like, no, this is what we can do now, and we're going to do things like this. So, from a creative standpoint, I get why, like, that turns you off. Like, I like having to do that kind of stuff in games, being forced to do that kind of stuff in games cannot be fun if it's not something you enjoy, right? But as somebody that enjoys that stuff, like, I love a game that kind of, like, leads me away from the main path sometimes. Like, Far Cry 4 is a perfect example of a game that I ended up spending 150 hours in, because long after I finished the story, I was doing other shit that was so much fun. And I wouldn't have been able to know about how to do all of that if at some point in the story I wasn't kind of shown how to do it, right?
Right. So the interesting thing is, I like doing that stuff too. I'm not one of these people who I only want to do the main story of the game, but I need it to feel like it's my decision to do that.
Yeah.
And I don't know, and that right there is the hardest part of gaming. And, like, I think it's why Symphony of the Night, of the Holy Triumvirate of 1997, is the game that I choose as my favorite, and it's the one that I beat every year since the year I first completed it. And that's because it feels like I have this choice. I have this choice to go right to the boss and beat it, or I can continue to explore the castle and see other things and find other experiences.
Yeah, I think one of the other big things that we have to consider in all of this is also like the state of who was playing games in 97 and what they were capable of and all that sort of stuff in terms of getting a hold of these things. Because part of what also leads to this is the fact that like the reason why Final Fantasy VII strikes me as much as it does in a way that it kind of really led to gaming in a way personally that it defined me. Like Final Fantasy VII is one of those definitive games for me as a gamer. And so like the reason that hits like that though is that we had gotten a PlayStation, and so like we didn't have anything else in the house yet in terms of like what was out at the same time, N64, Dreamcast, that sort of stuff.
So
like
PlayStation and Saturn came out in 95.
Yeah, Saturn. Okay.
And then N64 didn't come out till 96. Like it was a whole year later.
But 97, which would have been the year that we got.
Which when everybody had it, those were the three that were competing against each other.
Right, and we didn't have those systems yet. It would be years until Zach finally like dove in on an N64. I'm pretty sure he's the one that spent the cash on that, right? So like Final Fantasy VII comes along, and it's the game that allows me to do this, right? Which is an important part of this. And I think the thing that Final Fantasy VII succeeded in is kind of feeding all audiences, whereas like Symphony of the Night and Ocarina of Time were feeding specific audiences. So it also kind of wins that fight, just in terms of like the way that people kind of fondly remember it, is like it hit more people because more people were into the PlayStation in that moment. More people were doing this also all over the world. You know, one of the big things is that like the PlayStation was freaking huge outside of the US as well, you know?
Right. It was so big that's why Final Fantasy VII was released as Final Fantasy VII, because they're like, we're not playing this game anymore with America where we renumber them. We understand that gaming is an international hobby and everybody's going to be taking part in it. And I think the other reason why Final Fantasy VII is that game is up to that point, nobody had seen graphics like that. I will even admit that watching this game that is 22 years old, which, holy fuck, just like putting that into perspective for me is, and seeing like that opening cutscene, I'm like, this looks good still. Like it still looks good. It's not like there's a real jank factor with a lot of 3D polygon games when you go back and look at them. I don't feel that way about Final Fantasy VII.
It embraces the jank in a very good way. Like, it does a very good job of embracing that as part of its art style.
Yeah. And also, I mean, the second you go into a battle and it's a completely different figure that, like, looks like a human being.
Yeah.
I'm impressed. And because I'm playing on a PS3, but it is my actual disc that I am using.
Man, nice, man. I've got a Switch port actually of it that I am in the middle of.
Yeah, I the only reason I didn't want to do one of the ports, if I couldn't find my original disc, and there was some nervousness about that, because I had let a friend borrow it, and I didn't know if I ever got it back. I did. It was with Dale's games, so it just somehow like got pushed in with the games that Dale owned. But I did find it going through all of our games this weekend, and I'm like, I want to play this, because the ports offer like the no encounters or everybody is super high level, like those little cheats, or like 3 times speed.
The group upgrading, I think, is one of the big things that they introduce in the ports, which honestly I am using, but you know,
no, but you've beaten the game. You're allowed to do that. Like
otherwise, fucking play it first.
Well, no, I'm not. I'm setting very, very strict goals for myself for what this is.
Of course,
like those 199 games, I didn't use a single save state in any of those.
Right, you're doing this as part of a larger thing that constitutes that kind of gaming for sure.
Right, where I'm like, it'd be very easy to complete this and be like, I got the story now, and that's all I cared about. But that's not what it is. I want to actually feel and experience this game that like never gelled with me before.
Yeah.
And I've done so many of those this year. Like I beat Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link. That's a game that I like never thought I would ever finish. But I'm just like, I need to beat it. I need to finish this game because it's the only Zelda game that I've never like given a real college try. And it's beating Metroid on regular Nintendo. Like, I never thought I could do that. Everything looks the same in NES Metroid.
Yeah. Man.
So like, this is the perfect game for it.
I'm really glad that you're doing this because, hey, as a game that, like I said before, has defined me, like, to not even be able to like reference it, because at this point I'm ready for you to hate this thing, man. I've got there's no part of me that is like banking on you falling in as much love with this as I have for it. But like being able to talk about it and reference how it kind of like shaped and made newer games for good or for ill, like is important. Like and I'm glad that we're finally going to be able to do that.
It's I'm reading Infinite Jest basically.
Right.
I mean, nobody read Infinite Jest. Let's just be honest. Everybody owns it, but has anyone ever read it? I'm sure someone has. I bet Jesse Eisenberg's character in,
right now Zach's ears are burning
the
somewhere.
Last tour. Do you think he's read Infinite Jest? He always says he's a bad English major.
If any of us, exactly why it's probably the only one of them that he ever read.
Nice. David Foster Wallace. I just want to give his name. He wrote Infinite Jest. So it does feel good to be like, I call myself a video game fan, and it's just one of those ones that I never did. So I'm kind of glad that I'm finally filling in that. Yeah. And I guess things I like about it is I am approaching it like a Final Fantasy game, as opposed to, like, it didn't feel like a Final Fantasy game when I first tried it. Yeah. But, like, it's very easy to look at Barrett and be like, oh, he's just the bow user. He's just Rosa from Final Fantasy IV.
There you go.
Like, by using the analogs, it's making it a little bit easier to stomach some of the changes.
Well, and keep in mind that, like, it's purposely built for you to do that, man. Like, that is a legitimate way to play that game, because that's wholeheartedly the concept. Like,
Final
you know
Fantasy,
what I mean?
Yeah, that's true. You're not wrong. I guess it was such a shock for me also when I first tried playing it that it's, like, futuristic. It's more final than fantasy.
Oh man. That's they keep making them. Anyway.
No, I'm serious. Like, because the first ones are all a fantasy setting. Though I gotta say, Final Fantasy II, I mean, I think I gushed about it on this before. And if I haven't, Final Fantasy II as a numeral 2 second one released, that game, criminally underrated. Track down the PSP port, play it. It's so good. I can't believe how good it is. Right down to the fact that the whole concept of the game is you're looking for the Ultima spell, which, if you played a Final Fantasy game, Ultima means something to you, be it the weapon or that. Like, you are searching for the Ultima magic, and they're, like, convinced that if we get the Ultima magic, then we can eliminate our enemy, and we will be freed from tyranny. And then you get it, and it's super weak, and it doesn't work. And one of the programmers was like, I did that on purpose. I did that without any permission, but I looked at it, and I'm like, these people are putting all their hope into 1,000-year-old magic to save them. And it would just be great if no, that's not how this works. You have to put faith in yourself in order to beat your enemies, not in, like, some magical thing. And it really, like, it's one of the coolest things in the world that they somehow kept that in these ports.
Yeah.
That, like,
yeah, man.
That it became, like, part of the fabric of 2. And it's cool because you're like, oh, wow, this spell sucks.
Yeah.
I have to do other things. I don't know. So I'm excited. Plus, like, I care more about Final Fantasy now than I did as a kid. Right? Like, once you get older, like, an RPG is, like, more your speed.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, like I think Final Fantasy also opened the doors for me in a lot of ways for things like anime. Like I was not an anime watcher beforehand. The odd, like, Dragon Ball Z episode or Pokemon and all that sort of stuff, but nothing like I am now, where, like, I can name specific artists I prefer and like books I'd rather be. Like it opened the door for more than just video games for me. Like it showed me a whole other possible style of storytelling and character and stuff, Yeah. Which Final Fantasy, I think that is the series that does that for everybody. It's just which one does it hit you at, right? And it wasn't until 7 for me.
I mean, Final Fantasy 2 is the one that really got me on board with that game. Mm-hmm. And I played it after I had played 3 and didn't love that. But 2, I had gotten a bunch of free rental coupons to All Star Video. You know, there's a name from the past. I have not heard that name in some time. Obi-Wan. Sorry. And I rented it like an entire summer and just completed it. And it was awesome. And I'm like, cool. I like this one. I need more like this. Yeah. And then I didn't really get another one like that until 5 was released stateside. And I think 5 is probably my favorite if I had to, like, pick a favorite. Because I just like it's got that inherent...
Did 5 have a weird name when it came over?
5 never came over. 5 was not released in America until after Final Fantasy VII hit so big. And they're like, well, let's release the ones we never released over here.
Right, yeah.
So that's what that happened. And 5 is cool because it's got, like, the jobs where you switch up classes throughout. Yes. But really what I like is that you watch the world die 3 times. Like, it's about failure. It's about, like, starting over after you fail. And it's a very cool narrative about that. That, I don't know. And I'm excited about, like, you know, from what I've gotten in Final Fantasy VII right now. Again, I have barely scratched the surface, and I know that it does feel very interesting looking at that world through the lenses of other Final Fantasy games. But it's very weird in 2019 to be like, oh, we're a terrorist group. And we're proud that we're a terrorist group.
Yeah. Yeah, but then the whole, well...
I don't know yet. I don't know yet.
Yeah, no.
But, like...
you're not wrong, and they never... And it's never that they're ever not a terrorist group. Like, I don't want to sit here and, like, talk about how they're totally domestic terrorists. But there's a little bit of a twist in how they're used that is kind of interesting and relevant in weird ways. So yeah, man.
Oh yeah, no, yeah. Like I definitely once there's already been that scene where, you know, the news report says that thousands died in the, like, opening explosion that you set off, and it's like, I don't know if that's true or if that's just the media framing it in a weird way, because. What?
Yeah, man. Yeah, the game is weirdly relevant.
It's weirdly relevant in 2019. And I don't think that, like, and I don't think if they weren't very obviously a domestic terror group, I wouldn't be, like, laying over this filter that then makes me question everything else that I'm hearing in the game. So it's cool. It's very cool that, like, oh, fake news existed all the way back then. Maybe it is more final than fantasy. I had to do it again. I was so proud of it.
No, it was good, man. It was very, very good.
So, have we touched on everything you wanted to talk about this week? Anything you'd like to add? We got time. We can do whatever we want. It's our podcast.
No, I gushed about Frozen 2 last week. Mandalorian is still going strong. Super good. I'm very, very excited. I don't know if I've gushed about it yet, but the news of Lock and Key coming out in a couple of months. Gonna have to hit up Zach and see if maybe we should do something about that because it's just too good to pass up. But yeah, no, everything else is good. Christmas is coming hard and fast.
Christmas is coming hard and fast, and I don't know if I'm in the spirit yet or not. I'm a little nervous about that. I have not bought any gifts yet. There's a spoiler.
I watched Alfred the Christmas Tree for a second time. I'm totally in the spirit.
There you go. Nice. I'm watching Seinfeld, which is what I did last year.
Nice.
I just got to not the movie one, season 4, episode 14, which is such a good episode of TV, especially as someone who goes to the movies as much as I do.
Is that the one with Rochelle in it?
That's where Rochelle is introduced. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Jerry, take the jacket.
Oh God. Yeah, man. Yeah, no, I know. Holiday watching recommend. I do need to hit on this. I've started watching some of the competition shows Hulu has in their holiday section and have found 2 amazing ones. There's a light one that's very good, the Ultimate Light Battle or whatever. Check that one out. There's some very, very like kooky good like light displays that are in that show. But the one that is phenomenal is there is a Christmas wrapping competition show where they wrap presents as a competition, and it is batshit insane. Check that out.
I thought they spit pure fire about the Yule season,
Sejohn. They didn't go through with it. I was at the very least have fucking Stoop be the one that hosts this. Like bring in somebody. But no, they don't go anywhere with the joke. So don't go in expecting that. But it is crazy in other ways. Yeah.
All right, I guess if we're doing holiday watching, last Christmas broke my movie cherry, but I also watched A Moody Christmas, the 3-night event from Fox. Starring Dennis Leary. Super good. Really, really good. Can't believe how good it was.
Excellent.
I don't.
Yeah, Netflix has one of those up too with Dennis Quaid that's kind of in that same vein that I'm going to check out.
Very cool. So we got that stuff to do, and also, I mean, Star Wars comes out this week. In 3 days, I'll have seen the end of the saga.
Yeah.
Episode 9. So I guess we'll probably talk about that next week, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. We've got our tickets already for. We're actually going to a place that has beer and food and stuff too, so it'll be a good one.
I'm excited to see if my hack worked, and I'll share it here so that you can know and you can be thinking about this if you're listening. I have the A-list from AMC, so I get my tickets for free, right? But then I'm like, right. But if I didn't have A-list, I'd buy a ticket to Star Wars, right?
Right.
So I bought my free ticket, and then I bought the seat to the left of me.
Oh, yes, we have talked about it.
And Dale bought the seat to the right of her ticket, so that, like, we can have a space. We're not going to be walled in by humanity the way we have been for literally every other Star Wars movie since Force Awakens came out. Mm-hmm. And I want to see if it works, or if they're like, this person never came. We got two.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. I mean, technically, you'll be picking up the tickets.
Yeah, exactly.
So, like,
technically,
they won't have
I'll
any
have
indication.
bought it, and I gave them money. So
right, and like literally, there will be no way for them to know somebody didn't quote unquote show up for the seat because you will have the tickets in hand. Like,
right, I know that's
it's not like they're sitting in a will call somewhere.
That's the hope. I just you never know.
Man. Well, we'll see.
Or it could just be someone who sits in the seat, and then I'm gonna be like, that's bought. Someone bought that. You can't sit there. So you stop sending me meat. 10 minutes to detonation.
Let's use 10 seconds to dance. I love Final Fantasy.
I'm so glad. Like, this is so cool. It's like I'm seeing a side of you. So if you'd like to yell at me for not playing Final Fantasy VII in the 22 years that I could have, you get me on Twitter at Devon D. Decker.
And if you want to challenge me to a game of Caravan, you can find me at Siege versus the World.
I don't even know what that means. Will, take us home.
Thank you for listening to the Say Report with your host Devon Decker and Stephen Serwick. Please follow the guys on Twitter and Facebook by searching for The Say Report, and you can always subscribe on your podcast channel so this is delivered straight to you and you can enjoy it every week. With apologies to your mother, we'll see you next time.